5 on Friday, May the 6th, for the meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee. I've begun the recording. And so let's proceed to the agenda. And let me just share it. Well, actually, the first thing is approval of the minutes. And let me see if I can find them. I hope they're visible. So these are the minutes from the meeting of April 1st. And I'll just scroll through it quickly. Chair report, vice chair report. Nesha response to BOR substantive change, which we have again on the agenda for today. COVID-19 situation. Joint meeting of the BOR and FAC.
Excuse me, David, could you make that your full screen? It's just appearing as like a tiny box inside.
Yeah, I think something is going wrong here. Let me see if I can do that.
Rather than sharing your full window, you could share just the document and it'll make the words bigger.
Yes, I'm going to try and do that. Is that any better?
Not for me. I can't read it at all.
Yeah.
But I can pull up the doc. If it's in the email, I can pull it up that way.
Yeah, it is. It's in
Yeah. Okay.
one
Thank
of the
you.
emails. Okay. Sorry about that. And I'll try to correct that for the next thing that I have to show. I'm not exactly sure what's gone wrong here. But in any case, are there any amendments or modifications to the agenda? To the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve them? Is there any mover?
I made a motion to approve.
Okay. Those in favor say aye. Aye. I'll cast a single ballot.
Aye.
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 Please. Aye.
Aye.
Sometimes it's kind of a formality to go through this, but in any case. All right, those opposed? Right. Those who couldn't see it and wish to abstain, that's legitimate. Okay, that's approved. So let me see what I can, if I can do something better here for the agenda. And is that the same problem? I'm just gonna stop sharing for a second and begin sharing again. For some reason, on screen 2. Is that better? I think that should be slightly better. Okay, here's the agenda for today's meeting. Are you able to see that?
I can see it. It's Patrice. Yes.
Okay, thanks. I just clicked screen 1 instead of screen 2, but it showed screen 2 is smaller on screen 1 for the minutes. Okay, so we have the report of the co-chairs for universities and colleges, and some of those issues sort of overlap, and so we'll both be talking about that. There's once again an issue report on the CSCC application, and I think we've had time to sort of look it over more closely, and perhaps we have some further things to say. Strategy for fall 2022. I just mentioned a few items here. The question of accreditation of the individual community colleges, faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy, continuing departments and department chairs, and other issues. And then in other matters, the FAC conference for fall 2023 funding, COVID measures, if there's any further discussion on that, and other business. Are there any additions that people want to make to the agenda? If not, let's consider that simply as approved, and proceed then with the agenda as such. I realize, the beginning of May, and you're all sort of under the gun with the last week of classes and preparing for finals and looking for missing term papers and absent students. So perhaps we can go through the meeting, but we'll see how much there is to discuss. In any case, as you all know, the last board meeting, the regular meeting for the month of April, was canceled and was replaced with a special meeting, the purpose of which was to announce the naming of the president of the Connecticut State Community College, famous one community college. And as you all know, that's John Meduco, who by education is an MD from one of the better known Caribbean universities, St. Matthew's University, and a Bachelor of Science in Biology from California State Polytechnic. His most recent function has been in the Minnesota State College and Universities system. Where he has been Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs. And that he was approved at a salary level starting at somewhere in the $300,000 low range at the meeting on just held of the board, and that was a special meeting. The other individual who's been named, and I guess you've seen this as well in your emails, has been Ray Cathuria, who has been named as the vice president, the provost for the CSCU, i.e. the whole system. Okay? And he is a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. His degrees are from the University of Delhi in New Delhi, and he has most recently been it appears to me the vice president for academic affairs at Indiana University. Assistant vice president, sorry, for University Academic Affairs at Indiana University in Indiana. So those are the two nominations, although I should note, I saw today in the email, they were looking for an executive assistant for the CSCC president. I don't know that we have any comments other than to perhaps welcome those individuals in the expectation or hope that they will be willing to engage with faculty and with the Faculty Advisory Committee in a way more meaningful than that of their predecessors. Other issues or other items, there's, and I wouldn't leave this as an open discussion, and perhaps Kalina, you can jump in here, but we did receive a report, and I sent it out to everybody from faculty at CCSU in the math department concerning the modified quantitative reasoning objectives. And I know that Fred Latour is here, who's not only the president of the CCSU Senate, but a member of the math department at CCSU. Fred, am I asking too much? If you could sort of say a few words about this?
No, that I think that should be okay. So my understanding is that this process is going on at all the community colleges and all the CSUs. So there's this system-wide faculty committee called FAC, which has been in the process of this designing learning outcomes, for the, I guess, the general education component of the TAP. Essentially what those are learning outcomes for the general education component of the TAP degrees at the community colleges. It doesn't directly affect the CSUs, except of course that the plan is for those community college students to transfer to the CSUs. So I guess the idea is that there's 9 sets of learning outcomes, and my understanding is that those have been sent to all 17 faculty governance bodies, curriculum committees, and blah, blah, blah for approval at this point. And my understanding is that it's supposed to be the final approval, meaning that you can either vote yes or no. If you vote no, you have to give a reason. But my understanding is that at some of the universities and colleges, there was a pretty widespread effort to get feedback from faculty on the proposed learning outcomes. At Central, there wasn't that much of an effort to seek feedback. So, of course, most people hadn't seen those learning outcomes until just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And in general, the feeling is that most of the sets of learning outcomes were actually okay, given the the situation under which the proposal was being designed. I mean, I understand that they had some constraints. They wanted to reduce the number of learning outcomes. But the thing is that at Central, we actually voted to approve 7 out of 9 sets. The science learning outcomes were voted down, partly because they did not include something about testing hypotheses, which the faculty believe the science faculty believes is a core component of science. The quantitative reasoning outcomes were completely eviscerated and were voted down unanimously, which is very rare. So my understanding is that in addition to that, David received an email from a concerned faculty member in the math department who believes that the proposal is part of an effort to water down a mathematics courses at the community colleges, and the result would be that the students would not be prepared when they get to the CSU, and they would be set up for failure. So I'm not sure exactly what FAC's role is on this, because the job of designing the SLOs was given to another faculty, namely FERC. And I believe the co-chair of FERC is present at this meeting. But this is something that people in my department got very concerned about. There's a couple of issues that were identified, but the 2 most important, interesting ones were that the learning outcomes left open the possibility that a course could qualify for quantitative reasoning because it includes arithmetic, which is kind of a very low-level type of math, and also that there could be some at the end of the first proposal, the word words is there, which means that there could be a course with no equations, no graphs, no diagrams, no tables, just words, and that could qualify as quantitative reasoning. So I'm not sure what the faculty member who contacted David wanted FAC to do, but I did want to say that what happened at Central is that those got debated at the Gen Ed subcommittee, the curriculum committee, and then at the Senate, and that was the result, that we decided to vote not to approve the scientific reasoning and the quantitative reasoning outcomes.
Thanks, Fred. Well, I think one of our roles is just to keep informed as to what is happening. Others? Ron, I see Ron has his hand up. I know that there are a number of others.
Thank you, David. At Naugatuck Valley, we decided not to have any votes on this because the Gen Ed that was presented to us is essentially the gen ed for the consolidated college, and we do not support that gen ed. So we are not voting on, outcomes for a gen ed that we do not support. And so that's the way we treated it. We do, we did acknowledge, especially the English faculty, think the outcomes are really watered down English courses considerably, and takes the research component out of English 101. It's just really, they're really unmeasurable and poorly done, but that's beside the point, because we don't support the gen ed that's been presented, and so therefore we're not going to vote for outcomes on that gen ed.
Are there others? The co-chair of FERC is here. Is there something that you would wish to add?
I would be happy to speak. Thank you very much for letting me come. My name is Sarah Selk. I am a biology professor at Three Rivers Community College, and I am co-chair of FERC. And actually, my other co-chair, Heidi Lockwood from Southern, has been able to join the meeting as well. So we are both here today. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I'll respond briefly to Fred and to Ron as well. Ron, I want to make one clarification on what you said, and it's shorter, so I'll do that first. If colleges either do not participate in the process, or if any of the categories of student learning outcomes do not gather enough support, it's not that there will be no outcomes. It will be that we will remain with the current 2012 version. So I just want to make people clear where I don't frame it as choosing to accept these. I frame it as we're choosing which version of SLOs we want. We want the 2012 version or the 2022 version. FERC, which is FIRC, stands for the Framework, Implementation and Review Committee. Thank you, Fred. You typed it faster than I could speak it. So the framework refers to the Framework 30, which is the 30 credit general education core of the 60 credit transfer degrees. And so FAC FERC is the faculty-led committee that looks at this gen ed program. We are elected faculty members, and after the transfer degrees were implemented, we collected data for a couple of years, assessment data on the current SLOs, the 2012 version, and based on the assessment data, launched a revision process. And now, Fred, I'm looking at you a little bit here. We launched a revision process in February of 2012. So this revision process has gone on a little bit more than 2 years now. And the FERC each institution's FERC representative, one of their primary responsibilities has always been to come back to their colleagues and communicate what the work of FERC is, and to seek engagement from their colleagues on the work that we're doing. We did not ourselves write these outcomes out of the blue or in a secret little room off to the side. We started with a system-wide workshop. We then had small subgroups. We reached out to various system groups when they existed. So for example, the written comm recommendations, actually CSET took a look at them as well. And so sometimes we know there can be a breakdown in communication. And so I think that's the biggest part of what's going on right here. there was a lot of feedback received a year ago in the spring of 2021 from various institutions, both the 2 years and the 4 years. And everybody, I mean, you are all our faculty, so everybody should have received the links to the Google documents at one point. Should have received the links to the Google Docs a year ago that had all of the feedback. And then our most recent communication through the FERC reps, which was the presentation of the kind of final draft with links to the original feedback that was received a year ago and every college's feedback listed with our kind of comments in reply. So this really has been a 2-year-long democratic, faculty-led, iterative process. So are there questions? And I can drop it for people who don't know what documents I'm talking about. I'm more than happy to put the links into the chat so that people have those documents on hand.
I'm doing that right now, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. Fred, do you have follow-up questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking is that, you know, I think a lot of faculty members are very frustrated that this is our first chance essentially to provide feedback, you know, and our feedback is that 2 of the sets of learning objectives are bad and 1 of them is really bad. And, you know, and our feedback, it's not even clear that that feedback is going to be taken into consideration.
Well, the feedback, I mean, at this point, the SLOs are out for a decision, right? We either stay with the current 2012 version or we choose the 2022 version. There is work that FERC is going to do next year. And for everybody in the room, we have heard loud and clear that it would have been really helpful if the rubrics had accompanied the outcomes. And that just, we didn't get that work done. And so next year we plan to work on putting together the rubrics that would be used along with these student learning outcomes. And Fred, some of the concerns that I've heard you say in this meeting about arithmetic and you know, lower level skills, that can be addressed in the rubric. So I think there is room for your comments to inform the work that we are doing next year. And that reminds me of the second point I wanted to say. So thank you for saying that. With regards to quantitative reasoning, that is a unique category in that there is often a very specific math requirement for programs. Now, don't forget, FERC is concerned with these transfer degrees. So within every transfer degree, there's a quantitative reasoning course, and every program, every pathway work group sets what that course is. So I'm the representative to the biology pathway from Three Rivers. Our quantitative reasoning course is pre-calculus. You will not get a transfer student in the biology degree that has just an 8th grade math level. And so I mean, college level courses are the only courses that have ever transferred. So I want to make sure we're not blurring lines here between what FERC's responsibility is, which is to oversee the student learning outcomes, and others' responsibilities to vet courses, and others' decisions, such I'm thinking of ACME, to fill in the blank, big, I don't know what to say, right? So I just,
yeah, I mean, that's,
right?
I think that's part of the concern also is that with ACME, community colleges are, you know, being essentially there's a lot of pressure on them to design 7th grade level math classes and 7th grade level English classes and claim that those courses will transfer to the universities and prepare the students for the work at the universities. We want to accept our students from community colleges with open arms. We also want them to be prepared. And,
Right.
you know, we,
Right.
so,
So
I
I
mean,
guess, yeah. So, okay. So I'm just going to look you in the eye. I know you don't know me. You've never talked to me before. I'm going to look you in the eye, and I'm honestly, genuinely 100% going to say that the faculty who put these together are absolutely devoted, professional, caring, concerned faculty who have the same exact concerns that you do. But our job, I mean, we started this before Acme, right? Our job was never to create a set of learning outcomes that would fix the problem of that Acme is making, right? Our job was to create a set of learning outcomes for college level courses that will transfer, that were able to be assessed. And the streamlining of the SLOs that you see is not a dumbing down to try to fix, to try to support Acme. I don't think any of my colleagues who are on FERC support Acme. It was honestly 100% driven by the feedback we got that the current SLOs are really hard to assess. And we were trying to make SLOs that we could assess so we could figure out where our students are in their learning and support them. So the streamlining that you see is 100% due to focusing on assessment and backward design from assessment. It has nothing to do with Acme. And we think that these are reasonable outcomes for college level courses. And we only want to send, well, now I'm speaking as a community college faculty, only want to send prepared students to the 4 years. And I am fighting my own battles on other fields with decisions that are being made that I think are unethical and not doing right by our students. I personally don't think the SLOs are part of that, though. And I know you don't know me, but I honestly, genuinely, 100% am saying that from genuinely. So, okay. And Colina had her hand up, but I'm not running the meeting, so I'll just zip it and mute myself. And
No. I just actually, I wanted to sort of just confirm again with you, Sarah, because I think, you know, it seems to me that what you're contending with is a lot of like contextual stuff, the stuff that's going around what FERC is doing that is really undermining our ability to like fully trust that this can be successfully implemented, right? So one of those things is Acme. And the other is that throughout the consolidation process, we've been informed that what we're following is the so-called TAP model, right? And FERC is the heart of TAP now, the ongoing process in TAP. And the process has been with that so-called TAP model that whether you approve, disapprove, fail to act, protest, whatever, whatever is proposed is implemented and is approved by the board. End of story. You're telling us that this is a different process. So I just want to be clear because that affects how we respond to it at the colleges. And I know for sure at Gateway, we did not understand it to be functioning this way. What you're saying is that a failure to explicitly approve this will leave us with what is existing. This will not be moved forward with TAP. So I'm wondering now, will there be now a misalignment with TAP and the Gen Ed for the consolidated community college? Would those now be two different?
No, okay. So we've got the category. So first of all, I want to say that Heidi's putting some great information in the chat. So if you, I'm not reading it, I'm just seeing it flash up. So there could be two parallel conversations going on, but I know that Heidi is putting great information in the chat. So Colina, we've got the categories and then we've got the SLOs within the categories, right? So, okay, so that's piece of information number one. Piece of information number two, and I get really passionate about this, by the way, because I I do feel like we are the last pillar standing that has remained independent and been able to do independent work that I'm really proud of. And I get that it's so hard to untangle all of this because of decisions that other people made. So as you hear me getting very excited, I try very hard not to get defensive and mostly just to be excited about it. So, so the Gen Ed task force for Connecticut State met and they decided to create a 21 credit Gen Ed core that's a subset of the Framework 30. They could have decided to create a Gen Ed core from the ground up with totally different categories or just with disciplines like math and history and English, but they didn't. They took what many of the community colleges were already using. So that right away became difficult for us because now people say any work that FERC does on our degrees, including the student learning outcomes for our students, is the work of of Connecticut State. And we have maintained from the beginning that we began this process years ago. It's been in our charge since 2012 that one of the things that we do is review the student learning outcomes and improve them where necessary. And so, so we collected the data for years, and then we launched this process where we with faculty. And so the student learning, okay, period. Does that make sense? You following me, Kalina? Okay. So then the next point is when Gen Ed for Connecticut State said we're going to go with these categories, they also said we're going to take courses that are vetted for those student learning outcomes. So Ron is not incorrect to say that these student learning outcomes are the student learning outcomes for the Gen Ed core at Connecticut State. But Connecticut State doesn't exist yet. And right now, these are the student learning outcomes for the students who are the TAP students who are transferring to the 4 years. And I think that there's room for improvement on them. So, so if we don't accept the 2022 version, we'll stick with the 2012 version because that's just what we've got, right? And so that's what's going to, I mean, there are still, like, no matter what, nothing that any of us do right now is going to change the Gen Ed core for Connecticut State and the fact that there are student learning outcomes. So we have the choice right now. Do we want the original ones from 2012, which were written by faculty, or do we want the new 2022 version, which were written by faculty? And if anything, we can be a model of what shared governance by faculty and what faculty work looks like. And that may not, so Kalina, you said something which Fred has also said, just with different specifics. A lot of how this is playing out at the colleges depends on how well your representative, if you have one, has communicated with your colleagues and explained this. There are several colleges and universities have finished their voting process and have, with no conflict, accepted all of the 9 and are just done with the process. Mm-hmm. So, and some of those, I think it's because it wasn't new to the faculty. They had been engaged for a long time. Their FERC rep had kept them updated.
Okay.
So many hands. I will mute myself again.
So yeah, let me just follow up by kind of like, I just want to sort of support the concerns that Fred has, because I think, you know, it's telling that you say, well, you started this long before and independent of ACME, but ACME certainly changes the context in which you're doing this work. And there is certainly an increase, you know, given that many of us are concerned about whether or not, you know, I'm looking at this resolution, it's like, you know, the concern that we're actually going to be producing a course that is equivalent to an 8th grade arithmetic course as opposed to a college level algebra course, if the outcomes aren't very, very specifically refined. And then and the concern also, right, about the kind of, well, and let me not go into that, because, you know, even the note about, you know, the skills needed for social mobility. Like that stuff speaks to me because that is what I'm so worried that we are doing with these new revisions, that we are putting students in, we're training them and not properly educating them, right? So in the context of ACME, given that that didn't exist before this work was done, I think there's like an increased need to protect against any reduction in the standards of this math course. And you said that the rubrics and so on are not yet ready or are not yet specified, but I wonder if there is something that we can do. And I want to put that also in another context, which I think you might have feelings on, which is what's going on with science courses right now. And the fact that faculty are not being listened to in terms of, and we are simply accepting, so someone else can speak to this much better than I can, and I know that both Fran and Heidi had their hands up for the math stuff, but you know, I hope that we can pivot to that in a second and talk about the fact that it is being acknowledged that what we are going to be doing with science courses at the community colleges may not be accepted at the university level. And yet we are moving forward. So we have to put everything in place to protect against those possibilities, because that's the direction that we seem to be moving in, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting because this, I don't know that this ever came up, and I kind of feel like Heidi might be the, I don't know if that's what you want to speak to, Heidi, and I don't know if it's your hand or Fran's hand that's up first, but Heidi, I might pass that to you if that was what you were going to talk about. I mean, Colleen, you raise an excellent point. That's all I want to say.
Well, let's go with Fran. I think who had his hand up first, and then go on to Heidi.
I'll defer to Heidi, David, and I'll come
Okay,
back.
Heidi, you're on.
So I actually have also been looking at Ron's comments in the chat, which if you don't mind, I'd like to address those as well. So look, I would be the first to say that there are problematic changes that were made in the categories of the SLOs. As a professor of philosophy, I would have been very strongly opposed, for example, to the removal of critical thinking. But I also understand and respect that the votes were made by elected faculty members, and that as a system, we are not going to see eye to eye on many different issues. And unfortunately, that there are choices that have to be made. We did, Ron, just so you know, we did not actually just change, for example, social and behavioral to social and behavioral sciences. We were using the original categories for, gosh, easily the first year and a half of this multi-year, 2-year process. And the only point at which we switched to arts and humanities rather than aesthetic dimensions was the point at which the it was clear that consolidation was inevitable. We, you know, and in which there would be no aesthetic dimensions classes for TAP students to take, right? You know, so our hands have been tied. We are completing, you know, or closing the loop on a 6-year assessment cycle. And this has been a process that originated long before consolidation was even mentioned. And now, I'm not saying that it's been a perfect process. I'm also not saying that the SLOs are perfect. I think that what's happened is we've been engaged in a faculty shared governance experiment as the longest standing elected faculty system-wide committee. And Sarah Salk and I have, quite frankly, been pushing back consistently against various initiatives. A good example of that is we've been speaking with the director of assessment for the CSCC, or at least I have, and been making very strong statements on issues that I see coming out of that office. And I'm sorry, Colleen, I was addressing Ron's point. Can you just quickly re-ask your question?
It wasn't so much a question as an observation that there is, between when the work began and now, there's an increased need to protect against the watering down of the content, right? Especially in the face of ACME and the fact that we are being explicitly told it's okay if our courses won't actually get students through to a university and be accepted. So I think that Sarah suggested that you might have something to say on that.
I do on that. And this is a conversation we're having at Southern too, for what it's worth. You know, so I think that one thing to keep in mind when you look at the SLOs that are coming out of FERC is that the motivation here, the incentive, has nothing to do with consolidation. The motivation was coming from 6 years of struggling to assess on a system-wide level the TAP programs. And one thing we were finding is that when, for example, we had a page and a half of written communication SLOs, that there was just no way, we were comparing apples and oranges, right? There was no way to kind of look at system-wide assessment in a meaningful manner. And so what this is an attempt to do is to hone the focus, not to water down, but rather to hone the focus of the SLOs that FERC is going to be assessing. It doesn't, of course, mean that there won't be additional SLOs. Oh my goodness, no. I would hope, for example, that where the written communication asks for a thesis-driven argumentative essay, it was a thesis-driven paper with material in there about what I interpret as an argumentative essay. I would hope that faculty would be viewing that as a multi-step scaffolded assignment where there is a research component. I can't imagine writing an essay with no research. And that would be, if I were teaching that class, that would be an additional set of SLOs in my course. And or if I were working with colleagues and teaching at my university and teaching a class that was, kind of meeting those SLOs, I would also hope that we would enhance the SLOs with our own campus level or institution level work. But that said, the reason the simplification is coming is not to water down the SLOs or the courses, but rather to make the assessment process both more manageable and more effective. Go ahead, Sarah.
While Heidi was speaking, I'm over in it took 2 clicks to get here, but I went to the document that presents the current SLOs and the new proposed ones. And I went to quantitative, and I see quite a few people are in that document, which is great. And then once you're in that document, if you go down to quantitative reasoning, and there's a sentence that says to see this. I'll just share my screen. Hold on.
I'm going to have to make you a presenter.
Oh, no, that's okay. No. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
If I can figure out how to do it. Oh, I just muted you. That's not right.
It might not be worth it. I can also just I just want to let people.
You're now a co-host. You've been promoted.
Oh, I thank you.
And then we'll pass on to Fran after you.
Okay. So this is the comparison document. And when I come down to under the end of where we're putting in the quantitative reasoning, and it says to see the spring 2021 first draft, along with the system-wide feedback and FERC's response, please see this document. So when I click on that, and now you guys are gonna have to tell me, I just changed tabs. Do you now see a whole bunch of red text?
Yep.
Okay. So we have all of these notes here. And it says at the bottom of page 2. Oh, and I see people have come over to this document as well. So it's great that you guys are able to open the document yourself. In order to more fully trace the development of the QRSLOs, blah, 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 we consulted the feedback that we got from assessment. overall summary. So this is our executive summary of the assessment data that we were collecting in the years prior to launching the revision in February 2022. So what's working, the basics from SLOs 1 to 3, what's not working, number 4, what are the recommendations? Trim down the language in SLOs 1 to 3 to the bare necessities, and revise or eliminate SLO number 4. So, it was never, so again, Colleen, I'm having like this light bulb moment and I can't think fast enough I can't incorporate it. And it's also, I'm going to stop sharing. It's also like, at this point, I think this conversation's really valuable for us in writing the rubrics. For changing the SLOs, they're out for a vote, they're out for a vote right now, so I can't change the SLOs. But Fred, I want to show you that this was never, ever about dumbing things down to an 8th grade level or producing unprepared students. I promise you, no, it was never about, oh my gosh, we're going to now be having all of these underprepared students. Colina, your voice I keep hearing your voice, but the landscape has changed now. But anyway, I thought that might be helpful for people to see that document.
Okay,
So
Fran, I think
Fran's been so
you're on
patient.
board
Hi,
next.
Fran.
Hi,
And I
Sarah.
see Fred as well. And then perhaps we can go on to this biology lab question.
Yeah, I don't want to cover points that have already been made, but I worked with Sarah, as did Ron, on FERC for some time, and Ron and I were on the original steering committee for TAP, so we do have some expertise in this. The original set of outcomes were written by fairly robust groups of faculty experts. So I don't know who wrote or participated in the revised outcomes. I would really be curious to see the feedback received by college too. I don't think we want to take the time to do that now. I should look at the document more carefully. But certainly on my campus, there was almost no discussion of this because, people are burned out and they're consumed by the consolidation and reacting to that. So they're not paying attention to this. And when Sarah says the intent was not to water down the curriculum or prepare or to result in unprepared students, I believe Sarah Selk. I believe everyone on the FERC committee. Of course, that wasn't their intent, but that is going to be the result of this. We know it clearly. The faculty experts are warning against it, and they are being ignored. So once again, our feedback is meaningless. Our participation really is meaningless. The system had a goal here to get this done. They didn't care how, and that's what they're going to do. I hate to be so cynical, but that is my conclusion.
Fred?
Yeah, I just want to say, Sarah, I believe you when you say that your goal was not to water down things. What I'm saying is that there is something that happened between the original design of the learning outcomes and now, and that's ACME. The board has made it very clear that they are really interested in messing with the curriculum in a way that waters down what our students learn and that causes them to be unprepared. I just want to make sure that you take that into consideration when you make your decisions, because, yes, you're kind of the oldest functioning system-wide faculty committee that is elected by the faculty. You're one of the very few that are elected by the faculty. That puts you in an important, in a good position to be, representing the faculty in a legitimate way, as opposed to, when the board creates a committee of 5 willing faculty and 10 administrators and say that's shared governance. But what I'm saying is that right now there are faculty members who are sounding the alarm and are saying that basically the situation is a bit different from 1 or 2 years ago when the outcomes were being designed, that there is a push to to water things down. And the concern that we're having is that even though the intention is not to water down, the inclusion of arithmetic and words in learning outcome one creates a loophole that could possibly be used by the board or by the system office to water things down. That's my concern. We're not trying to say you did you have intentions, nefarious intentions or anything like that. We're just saying there's concerns, mostly because of ACME and of the consolidation, that this can be used for nefarious purposes.
Okay, I think we probably, I think everybody's had a chance to speak a number of times on this, and I think we should probably at this point perhaps one of the functions of the FAC is to bring together folks who obviously have been on different wavelengths and different committees. And of course, for someone like myself, it's always a learning experience to find out what FERC stands for and its relationship to ACME and to TAP. I note that Steve Marcellinus was here for a while. He's still here. I don't know if he wants to add something about all the implications for TAP, but when you think about it, we have the question of learning objectives and FERC. We have the question of ACME, which is separate and distinct, but obviously has implications for those learning objectives with respect to English and math. We have the transfer articulation programs, which antecede all that and go back to the original merger of the community colleges and the universities. And we have our ever-present friend, students first, i.e., AKA consolidation. And when you mix all of that together, I think you get the kind of stew that we find ourselves in now. But I do think that people have expressed themselves quite clearly, whether it's Sarah or Fred or Ron or Heidi. Steve, I see that your video has come on, so let you have your word in.
No, thank you, David. I appreciate it. And, I just want to go on record saying that, Heidi and Sarah had a very difficult task in front of them. And one of the things that we tried to do with FERC and TAP in general, and I've addressed this group before with this, is, TAP is something that currently exists. It's something that our students are enrolled in. Over 5,000 students are in transfer tickets. It's something that has to be maintained. And the vote to maintain and look at the outcomes was put in place a while before a lot of these conversations took place. And I understand that the climate's changed and everything. Heidi and Sarah did a very good job of, again, trying to keep the consolidation piece separate of trying to work with the students that are currently in the programs and make it easier for the faculty that are assessing those categories moving forward. So, like I said, I think they did a very good job in doing that. Again, the collaboration throughout the system. I do understand, like Fred, what you were saying as far as communication. That is tough, but it's beyond their control as far as how FERC representatives are communicating back to their campus. So again, I want to let you know that I do believe that Sarah and Heidi did a very good job kind of shepherding this process.
Okay. Deb, I see that you have your hand up. It's a new speaker.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Deb, we can.
Okay. I'm outside. I'm just going to sit down here for a second. So I just want to add a couple of things. First of all, I will say, so most of you know this, but I was on the original committee that started in 2012, and I co-chaired with Lauren Doninger for many years. And I will say that we realized from the get-go that there were problems with the SLOs. They were unequal. Some of them were very lengthy. Some of them were very short. And it was the result of how the committees were constituted and how they were paid and the amount of time that they spent. There were a lot of factors. But we did realize from the get-go that some of the SLOs were very problematic and very, very complex. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, listening to Fred's concerns, I'm wondering, and I'll raise this with you, Heidi, I'm wondering if we didn't possibly miss something in particular with the quantitative reasoning revisions, and whether at Southern we shouldn't take another look at this. I know that we voted, I know that we've approved them, but what Fred has said does give me cause for concern in terms of whether we might want to go along with Central on their concerns specifically for quantitative reasoning. It looks as if it could be a relatively simple change that we would be suggesting in terms of making sure that that these learning outcomes are not used for a purpose other than what the committee has intended them to be used for. So, you know, Heidi, I guess I would ask you if it makes sense at this point for the community, for the CSUs to kind of come together and maybe discuss specifically what some of these concerns are and go back and, you know, revisit these at this time.
I actually had a long and wonderful conversation with Fred last night, and one of the things that I realized in reflecting on the process of the quantitative reasoning, SLOs in particular, was that it didn't benefit from what some of the other SLOs did, which is a system-wide discipline-based working group. So for example, Sarah mentioned CSET when we had problems resolving contradictory feedback that we received a year ago on the written communication policies. We got to kind of a point in FERC where we realized we need discipline-based experts. And we didn't want to just go to one or two institutions. We went to CSET, and they were able to give us kind of resounding, you know, unanimous feedback. That was what we used to kind of resolve the tension between the feedback that we had already received. And again, I need to kind of emphasize that the SLOs aren't being written by FERC, right? You know, FERC is sort of moderating the process of you know, kind of receiving system-wide feedback, starting with the drafts that were written at the workshop. And actually QR was, I think, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only work group that actually didn't come out of that workshop with a polished draft. So right there, you know, we had an issue. Rather than having the CSUs work and rework, because these are, after all, CC learning outcomes, right? Where, you know, we use them as a system, but I don't think it's fair to have a working group that doesn't include the CCs. I do think that there is absolutely room for a system-wide discussion amongst mathematicians, you know, amongst those who teach the courses that these SLOs will apply to. And what I had said to Fred is I think it'd be wonderful if there was something like, you know, we have the history group, we have C3 BIOS, we have CSET, right? We have all these discipline-based groups. If there was a working group formed, and perhaps, Steve, this could come out of the QR TAP group is a good place to start. And if they came to FERC next fall with a, you know, a petition, a change, you know, and of course, that's assuming that the QR proposed revisions pass. They may not, right? And if they don't, then, you know, then the question really for that same group is, do you really want to stick with the 2012 SLOs? Because as the document that Sarah showed, it explains there was faculty concerns, right? The only reason we're revising any of the SLOs is in response to the feedback that was received during that 6-year assessment cycle. So you know, I think you're absolutely right. This is not, Sarah said it clearly, this is not the end of the conversation. It's the beginning of the conversation. And what this process is revealing is the fact that we collectively as a system need stronger discipline-based ties, right, and methods of communicating, and in particular around well, you know, in order to combat and push against initiatives that are designed to water down, but also in order to combat and push against acne. Right? Deb, you've done a wonderful job with other faculty senate presidents and, you know, working across the system in general. I think what you've done is a model. So I'm hoping that that's, you know, one of the primary take-home messages, in addition to the message back to FERC that there are problems with the QR. And, you know, it may well be that FERC votes to refrain from working until a system-wide committee can provide additional feedback. Working on the QR rubric, that is.
Thank you, Deb and Heidi and Steve. I'm not going to try to make a synthesis of all this. I think we should, however, recognize the complexity of what's going on, and that many of the things that we are discussing are remnants of the Ojakian Gates administration, if I may put it that way. And the spin or the approach that they took to students first. We have a new president of the CSCU. They just have named the new president of the CSCC. There's a new provost of the CSCU system. My mantra is R&R, not review and revise. And it's pretty clear with the kinds of problems that we're seeing that really should be, I think, taken seriously. And I hope that, you know, when they review this tape, I know that folks at the system office and at CSCU, if they don't, at least look at what we had to say. That is to say, review the video. I think that, you know, some of the problems are really clearly enunciated here, and some of the hopes for, you know, efficient transition through transfer articulation from the community colleges to the universities, something with which we are all in favor, and as well making sure that things which are being decided for the CSCC do not compromise the students as they come to the CSUs. And so I think that's an important consideration as well, which brings us to the biology lab issue. I'm not sure who wants to speak on this. I know it was brought to my attention in an email from a colleague from one of the universities. I don't know if David wants to bring it up or somebody else, or Kalina perhaps. But
I know Nicola and Carmen probably can speak to this also, and I don't know if
Let's move on to
Sarah's
that
still
then.
with us. Yeah.
Nicola, I wasn't at the meeting. I just the one that sent it out to everyone. So Nicola, are you able to talk about it?
And if either Nicola can, or if Nicola can't, I was at the meeting. as
Sarah,
well.
you were there too. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Nick, are you there? I know she's got a lot going on. Kalina, is it okay if I talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So I'm a biology faculty member, and there is a faculty group called C3 Bios that is all full-time biology faculty members at the community colleges are invited to be a part of. And our numbers have grown since since the pandemic, and we started to meet remotely. It's a lot easier. And so we've had representation from every college at our meetings over the last couple of years, and multiple people from some colleges. So we decided that we would be the alignment group because we have this history of working together. And so all of the biology courses that will appear in the Connecticut State catalog went through C3 Bio. So we are the TAP Pathways work group, and we are the APRC alignment work because we just decided we had this set up already. And so we had a discussion in C3 Bios about online labs, just the lab component, not the lecture component, the lab component, as we were putting through the courses. And all of the core biology courses that transfer to the 4 years for the biology majors. So for example, we have a year-long sequence, General Biology 1, General Biology 2. We have Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2. We have Microbiology. We have a Genetics lab. And the other prerequisite courses to the 200 levels, all of those on our forms we put through as have to have on-ground labs. And the learning outcomes for many of them are specific to hands-on skills that we think are best done in a lab. You might be able to argue they could be done with a kit, but none of us think they can, well, many of us don't think they can be done well with a kit. So, but anyway, so we put through that they have to be on online. The interim provost, sorry, it wasn't Maya who sent us the email. Amy Fest sent us an email to our chair, who forwarded it to us, requesting a meeting, saying that there was concern about the in-person lab requirement. I'm sorry, so I should say all of these went through. They were approved by APRC. They were approved by the Board of Regents with their on-ground lab requirement. So Amy Feast sent an email requesting a meeting, saying that there were concerns about the core biology classes being offered, having an on-ground requirement, and requesting a meeting. And then Maya, the interim provost, and Amy came, and Amy didn't speak, just Maya spoke. And the major, I think the most important comments to share that Maya made were these are all things that she said, paraphrased by me. The community colleges are hemorrhaging, are bleeding students. Those were actually her words. We're bleeding students, and they can take online core biology labs at other institutions, and if we don't offer them, we're going to lose students. That was number one. Number two, the issue of transferability is not relevant. It's not relevant for two reasons. Number one, yes, UConn says they will not take online science labs, but nowhere on the transcript does it say it was online, so we don't have to worry about that. UConn won't know. The second point with transferability to the 4 years in the system, so Western, Central, Southern, Eastern, Maya has spoken with the provost, and I don't know what the verb was. I don't know if it was she told them or they know. Actually, I don't know what the verb was, but that was the subject. I don't know if it was Maya telling them or them having, or just being in agreement on their own, that the 4 years will accept the online biology labs from the Connecticut community colleges. So it was unclear to me if the provosts have been told they have no choice, or if the provosts are also in agreement that they should be receiving these courses, but that they will receive the courses. The third point, when it was pointed out to her that that we are noticing that students who have taken online labs have deficits when they move on. So the community college nursing programs have noticed this, the vet tech program has noticed this, and the 4 years have noticed. And so we were told, and I don't know who the Western representative is, but Western was specifically noted as having recognized that students who take online labs arrive with deficits. And so Western is creating a 1 or 2 credit remedial lab science course. And so the 4 years are taking care of remediating the students, so we don't need to worry about it. I think, let's see, it was transferability, it was whether or not the students are prepared, and it was enrollment management. And then it was the provost is the one who decides course modality, faculty are advisory only. I think those are the main points.
Thanks, Sarah. So, I mean, what I hear from that, right, and I'm scanning through that meeting summary that David is sharing. This idea, so this isn't preference, like Western has confirmed that there are deficits from the online labs and UConn doesn't even accept them. This idea that because we don't notate on the transcript whether it was online or in person means that they will just accept it. That might happen for one academic year, and after that, they're just not going to want to accept our students. Like we were warning about our community college degrees losing validity, and this is a straight line path to that. And this includes like nursing and so on, you said, right? Like
I just said that in speaking with nursing faculty at my college, Three Rivers has a nursing program. The nursing faculty have noticed that the incoming nursing students are less well prepared with kind of their science background.
And same with Capital Community College. The nursing faculty are noticing the exact same thing. And we're spending a lot of time trying to catch them up.
Okay, so it's happening, I guess. I wanted to ask a question, but I'm sorry, I got distracted. Lois has her hand up though.
Yeah, I want to know if the if the bio faculty are going to do anything about this.
So this meeting happened a week ago, and we are. I'll speak for I know Carmen, you weren't at the meeting. Nicola is my colleague at Three River. We're going through the stages of grieving, right? So we've spent a lot of this week being angry. And so that takes a lot of energy, being angry. But yes, Lois, we are starting to organize ourselves to write a written rebuttal that we will ask our biology colleagues around the system to sign. So and can I quick so Ron, interesting that you said that because it has Ron put in the comment, how about putting outcomes in the TAP Gen Ed that require on-ground lab work? So it's never been the purview of FERC to vet courses or to have anything to do with modality. I will say, interestingly enough, one community college has finished their voting. They accepted all of the SLOs with the exception of scientific reasoning, and their reason is because it does not have it doesn't say that they have to be on ground, but the thing is, if we don't choose to take the 2022 version, we stay with the 2012 version, which also says nothing about having to be on ground. So, yeah. So I don't think the SLOs are the place to solve this problem.
Lois, go ahead.
Yeah, you didn't finish answering my question. You're going to write this letter, and who is this going to?
Oh, well, so I'll speak just for myself. I mean, I would think, I personally am hoping there will be a letter to Maya and to the new president of CC of Connecticut State and to President Cheng.
And what do you expect to get out of that letter?
I mean, what does anybody expect, right? It just kind of depends how you see your glass, right? So you guys can tell for me, I tend to be a glass is half full kind of person. I don't know. I was very upset at the end of the meeting because it was clear the tone of the meeting was not one of working. It was a you're being told what is going to happen tone. So I don't know, Lois, what the community college faculty can do. Maybe the pressure has to come from the 4 years. I will say so one of the things that was said was that she did say no one would be forced to teach online, but if faculty wanted to teach online, they could. So there's a very small number of biology faculty who do want to teach these courses online. So if
But they're not transferable, we know that. So why wouldn't you write a complaint letter to NETCHI? Why wouldn't you make it public? Why wouldn't you?
Okay, so these are
I'm not
great. These are,
understanding.
yeah, so these are great ideas. I haven't engaged in this much work, this kind of work up to this point. So I'm not I think that if you think that's the effective way to go, that will be a really good, that's a really great suggestion. Thank you. Ron, what you're putting in the chat are course outcomes, not student learning outcomes for the categories of like scientific reasoning. And I will absolutely tell you that my microbiology course outcomes are written in such a way that I think they can only be done with a hands-on lab. But there are kits, people, where they send bacteria home to the students to culture in their kitchen. And there are cheap $50 eighth grade, like, so how ironic is this, Polina? I totally see the irony here. Totally see it. Okay. There are cheap $50 microscopes that you send home to the students, right? That are made of plastic. And so it really is, again, coming down to the quality of the educational experience. Because I don't think that a student working independently in their kitchen, making yogurt, which is very cool, okay, but making yogurt and looking at slides through a cheap disposable microscope is the same thing as them working in lab with me supervising them, working with a different set of organisms that only the college can purchase, and working with expensive, high quality microscopes. So what we tried to say, there was very little discussion, right? We kept trying to rebut the points that were raised, and it was like a brick wall. We tried to say that the course outcomes are written such that they can only be taught in a hands-on lab, and that argument didn't go anywhere.
Deb?
So this is disgusting and disturbing for so many reasons. I mean, leaving aside the educational part of it, which of course is the primary issue here, just the fact that this is being looked at as, okay, we can sneak this in under the radar because no one is going to know because this doesn't appear on the transcripts. That is just, that's unethical. And the other issue of saying that the provosts decide which courses are acceptable for transfer, at Southern, it's the department chairs that make that decision. So I don't know why she is under the assumption that the provost could make that decision. My question is how, so when I found this out, which was just yesterday, I wrote to our department chair of biology, Betsy Roberts. And I said to her, you know, this has just come to my attention. You're probably aware of it, but, and the Senate has concluded its business for this year. But if you think this is something that is very urgent, we could certainly put forward a statement from the executive committee, and we could try to enlist the support of the other CSUs on this so that we're all making a statement about transferability. Betsy wrote back and said that she is in touch with the other chairs of biology for the CSUs, and that it is not an urgent issue and that it can wait until the fall. So I guess that's my question: is how urgent is this? How imminent is it? How important is it for us to make a statement sooner rather than later?
Is that question for me, Deb?
Yes.
Well, so So we're still in this situation, right, where we were forced online because of the pandemic, and we're still in a transition back. There are some colleges that set their fall schedule before all of the restrictions were lifted. So we do still have some colleges that are offering some online labs for the fall that, and I don't know. And so the thing is, I feel like it was Jane Gates, right, who was making the decision that said during the pandemic, online labs will be from the community colleges will be accepted by the 4 years. And so I don't know where that decision making, I don't know the timeline for when that is lifted. And I don't know if there would be community colleges that would say, oh, we still need another semester, or, there was nothing said now that courses in the fall that are online won't be accepted for transfer. So I don't know. I'm feeling urgent just because, and I know many of you in the room have had this experience, and it was the first time that decisions made about the way that I teach were made by somebody else, and I was told how I was going to teach in a way that I think is incredibly unethical. So I'm freaking out, Deb, but in terms of the whole system, I don't have a sense of time. Heidi's got her hand up.
Heidi,
Yeah,
I think you have.
I'm just going to reply, and I'll just say I'll at least follow up with our provost. I'm curious to know whether I want to hear him confirm that he has said that he will, on behalf of our biology department, that he's okay with accepting these courses. So at the very least, I'm going to do that.
Sorry, Heidi, I think you had your hand up.
If you don't mind, I really appreciate you recognizing us, David. So I am going in 4 minutes to a meeting of a subcommittee of the CSCU Online Learning Committee that's addressing faculty readiness. And one of the things, Sarah, if you think it's helpful, that I will raise is a motion that one part of faculty readiness is willingness, and that no faculty should be forced to teach an online course who doesn't want to. But then also at the general committee, the online learning committee, I think I'm also going to raise a proposal that the modality of a course be recorded on a student's transcript. And I guess I'm looking, not just for Sarah's feedback on that, but also feedback of FAC in general here.
Yes, Chris. Go ahead. You're muted. Chris, you're still muted. The unmute button on the bottom left. Oh dear. Chris, you're still muted. I'm afraid.
It could,
Okay, here you go.
David, it could be because he's a guest. He's using the I don't know whether that's the case or not. I mean, I shared the link with him, so maybe that's the reason.
I don't think so. I think it's just his at his end. I'm trying to unmute him.
It could be that he's using college technology.
Hello?
All right, Chris, you may just want to type into the chat room what you wanted to say.
You guys can't hear me?
No, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, what ended up happening, I guess, with the laptops, they have my the dual screen. I had it plugged in, so for some reason my thing wasn't working. Anyways, thank you. So I'm the department chair of the science department for NVCC, and Ron had emailed me this information and then told me you guys were talking about it. We had a department meeting today, and there's just a few things that came up that I'm not sure if it was addressed or or things that I've noticed that would be problematic with issues related to not necessarily issues, but they would need to be addressed. The first one was, we see enrollment much greater on online sections than there are for traditional or hybrid, at least on our campus for labs. And so if we are going to have online modalities for our lab sciences, there would need to be at least an admission by the schedulers or whoever's making course cancellation decisions that we should run the lower enrolled on-ground labs if they are being offered. So if we're offering online sections that are filling, that's obviously going to draw enrollment for some of the on-ground ones, so that they might be on the cusp of running or not, and that needs to be understood prior to actually offering those. The second one was when those templates for C3 Bio were being developed, there was the checkbox for modalities, and I know many of them were checked for on-ground only and not for online. And obviously that is either not happening or it's not being reinforced. My question is, there's also other elements to that course template that we had to submit, like for instance, facilities. And my personal program, horticulture, we use a lot of very specific facilities. Would those also be ignored, or how would those be reinforced? If the course modalities are not being enforced on what was approved, will the facilities also not be reinforced or enforced? Sorry. And then the last thing that came up that we wanted addressed was it seems like they're moving in a direction of getting rid of remedial English and math courses, but meanwhile we're being told that for those that need the extra help for online labs that they've taken, we're going to offer a possible remedial lab science course to catch them up to speed. It seems like it's something that they would be against based on what they're doing for English and math. That was it.
Thank you, Chris. Sarah, I see a big hand waving.
I just wanted to respond to a few of the things that Chris said. So with the comment about how there are currently labs being offered online, and so it seems that that were being ignored. So the APRC course proposals are for Connecticut State, so they would go into effect for the courses that are offered at Connecticut State in fall of 2023. Until now, there was no prohibition against offering online labs. We just, we faculty, but there wasn't a precedence of it. It wasn't done in large numbers. And so there was only one community college of the 12 that was offering online labs prior to the pandemic. But with the pandemic, I mean, I taught microbiology lab online for the academic year 2020-2021. I am now back in person. I'm teaching lecture and lab in person this year. So what you're seeing with online bio labs right now is the end of pandemic teaching. And it was, and the checking the box requiring online on-ground bio labs was APRC work for Connecticut State. So I just wanted to make, I hope that clarifies the situation on that, Chris. Sorry, I'm babysitting.
We see the youngster in the back.
Yes, I didn't realize I had a youngster over my shoulder.
That's all right. But up to now, we've only been amused by Lois's cat. But now we have a new tradition. We got some four-legged animals wandering around now. Bring my horse.
So,
but
and I want to say to Lois, 100%. So this has been my concern. My concern is about enrollment trends. If there are a few sections of online bio labs taught and they fill, there will be pressure to teach more and more online. And it comes down to, do we give students what they want or do what they need? And, my classic example, because I have kids, is my kids want to eat candy for breakfast the day after Halloween? Do I give them what they want, or do I give them what they need, which is a nutritious breakfast? So, and I also, there's the argument, well, we'll just have a few sections online, and the students who are going to transfer, or the students who are going to be bio majors, the ones who really need those skills, they'll just take the on-ground version. And I think that's asking a lot of our students to know, to have a plan, not change their plan, and to be educated enough and have the advising to know that they should take the on-ground class.
Okay, Kalina, Fran, and then myself.
Yeah, so just want to offer the observation that this is very much a race to the bottom, right? Our students already can get online degrees from any number of institutions. They're just not quality institutions. And if we don't set ourselves apart with the quality of education that we provide, like, someone's always going to be able to beat us somewhere else. Like, if this is how we're peddling, whatever the students want, like we should be. And then in terms of what you're saying there, Sarah, I agree completely in terms of, yes, like, we don't want to disadvantage students who don't know what they want to do right away. We want them to be able to discover, college level courses and find out that they love science when they didn't before. And that especially applies to students who came from under-resourced school districts where they may not have had the opportunity to know that they had both the interest and the talent, right? So the people who are going to be most disadvantaged by that kind of decision are, we're going to be putting those students further behind who were already further behind, and doors will be closed to them. And that should never be sort of the pathway that we take on. So it just surprises me that this whole, it's one thing to have an institution that like the premise of the 17 institution system is this transferability and this partnership with universities. And we're told that a goal of this institution is supposed to be like equity. But it seems that all the individual policies that populate the entity go in the opposite direction. It frustrates our partnerships with universities, and it creates any number of opportunities to set students who are already behind further behind. It's unfortunate that we don't yet have a governance. I mean, this is why we're having these conversations right here at FAC, because it's unfortunate that we don't have a governance body that can actually have these kinds of reflective conversations to make sure that policies align with goals. As far as I can see now, they are completely in opposition.
Fran?
One other thought, for students in the specially accredited programs that require a lot of science labs, such as nursing or dental, somebody needs to be in communication with those accreditation bodies. One would hope you might have some leverage there, that they might have concerns or share your concerns, and that could be brought back to system office as some sort of leverage to stop this from happening, quite frankly. It won't save the students not in those programs, but maybe at least it'll help the students in those programs.
Okay, I just want to intervene for just 1 second, because the question of nursing students, for example, unfortunately, Mark Jackson couldn't stay past 3 o'clock, but he has been working with the doctorate in nursing anesthesia program at Central, and is in our biology department, and has been working also with the nursing department, which is separate. But just as it rings a bell to me, because about 2 years ago, just as the COVID was breaking as we went remote, I was asked by my university president to participate in the Cscu online learning committee, which had been set up by Kevin Corcoran. And I did, because I'd previously in 2005 to 2009 participated in the Cscu online learning committees. And I was really surprised when that committee was run by 4 consultants from Blackboard, the company that provides our online learning module. And they then announced that after doing a study of the region, including all of New York State, which is significantly larger than all of New England put together, that in fact, amongst the programs that should be done online was nursing. And, I went and I spoke to some of our nursing faculty as a result and checked, the requirements in our handbook. And it was quite clear to me that that was unacceptable. And when we brought that up again, well, they retreated. And what they did is they simply said, okay, instead of doing nursing, we'll do accounting. And I mentioned in my report on this, which if anybody wants it, I'll send to you, that no reason was given for that either. And if that's the kind of decision making which is going on, it is really, I think, lamentable. I just wanted to add that particular anecdote to this. But I think what we see here is twofold. Problems, we've already identified problems with ACME. We've already now seen problems with the learning objectives for the math and sciences. We see here a significant problem with the question of online versus on ground for the biology labs. And more generally, there's the question of faculty control over curriculum and pedagogy. Now, that's been in administrative talk, that's the modality. And, I was surprised, but not perhaps surprised. I was saddened to see the reference that, oh, well, Provost will decide the modalities. No, that's part of the pedagogy. And whether something is better on ground or perhaps better online or hybrid, that should be part of the decision of the faculty, not the administration. And so I think I just want to emphasize that whole question of faculty control over curriculum and pedagogy. Those are inseparable. Fran, did you have a final comment? No? Okay. Sarah, I see your hand is up, and then we'll proceed to other agenda items. No, it's gone.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to say one other thing that was raised in the meeting that I just wanted to emphasize, because Colina, I read your rebuttal to ACME about how it's not actually an issue of, like, it's introducing inequity, not solving issues of equity. So the point was also made at the meeting that offering biology labs online, the core biology classes online, was an equity issue, making these courses available to students who might not be otherwise able to take them. And the response was, no, it is exacerbating issues of inequality because you will be selling students a bill of goods, having them take lab science courses that if they then transfer to the four-year university and show up as a junior taking a 300 level biology lab course, and it's the first lab course they ever took, they will be unsuccessful. So we are not setting themselves up. So we are actually creating, because I think that online biolabs are a less than version of the lab. So anyway, I thought that might resonate with you, Colina, because I know of your interest and sad experience with that.
Glad that's being addressed.
Okay. Well, I think we've discussed these issues, I think, fairly exhaustively. Let me propose we pass on to the other items. It's already 20 to 3. Hopefully we can finish perhaps by 3 and do it in a 2-hour meeting. I just wanted to come back there. We had on item 5, Cscu report on CSCC application analysis and response. We talked about it a bit last time. I just wanted to draw a couple of things to your attention because it's a 14-page report, but nonetheless there are some interesting things here and relevant to the discussion we've had. But for example, when Cscu is talking about respect for standard 6, you can see it here in pink, as it were, I've underlined it, learning and scholarship, all that they mention, and they continue to mention this, and obviously they got this from the system office, is anticipated administrative hires, 6 academic deans, 18 associate deans, and 2 assistant deans, right? And the academic structure with faculty in college-wide departments based on disciplines and programs has been launched, right? Those are 2 issues there. One is, of course, that apparently in the proposed structure for the CSCC, there will be no departments. And I think I want to draw, there will be a discussion at the next meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee of some resolutions that are circulating on the issue of maintaining departments and department chairs. But this focus again on academic deans, associate deans, and assistant deans as the first item here in teaching, learning, and scholarship strikes me as, significantly misplaced, and that's an issue that I think is worth our while coming back to. I wanted to point out one other thing. The comment on page 6, despite the many accomplishments achieved to date, however, substantial work remains to be done between now and July 1st, 2023 to assure CSCC will be in compliance with the standards for accreditation by that date. Further, we look forward to receiving as part of each progress report. Recall that there are 3 progress reports that NESHI is asking for. An updated analysis of the impact of these anticipate faculty and staff retirements, because we know there's a large number happening, on staffing on CT State, as well as information about the institution's plans to ensure that it, quote, employs sufficient and qualified personnel to fulfill its mission. And I'm just pointing out that we have to make also here the distinction between full-time and part-time. And there's one other point, which is somewhere here, right? And this is on page 13. Finally, the commission asks that the scheduled evaluations and report note on page 5. In passing, they've suspended the assessment reports from the individual community colleges. Of this letter, be delayed pending the commission's review of the progress reports submitted by CT State, assuming the plans outlined in the substantive change proposal are successfully implemented and CT State becomes operational as an accredited college on July 1st, 2023, the accreditations of the 12 now separate community colleges will be relinquished. The effective date of those relinquishments will be determined following the Commission's review of this June 2023 progress report. At any rate, the 2 issues that I wanted to focus on are firstly the question of maintaining the accreditation of the 12 community colleges. I think that's something on which we are all in agreement. In effect, what the NESHI report is doing is, in a sense, creating a 13th with its system office in New Britain and with an executive at around the $12 million price tag. But I think we need to come back and look at this whole question, especially this notion of relinquishing, right? It's not clear to me, and perhaps Lois, you are better informed on this than I, that NESHI itself can abolish the accreditations of the 12 community colleges, but rather that these have to be relinquished, presumably by CSCU. Then secondly, related to the issue we've been discussing today, is the whole question of faculty control over curriculum and pedagogy. Whereas this report, on a number of occasions, basically talks about teaching, learning, and related activities, scholarship with respect to deans, associate deans, and assistant deans. And that brings up the whole question of maintaining departments and also the role of department chairs. So those are the points that I wanted to make, but I do think we need to somehow come up with a response. This is a long 14-page document. It's somewhat repetitive, but it seems to me that we need to focus on the 3 or 4 or 5 issues which are really essential and where we have a fundamental and basic disagreement. So I thought it was worth just, reminding ourselves to take a look at this in greater detail and to focus. They focus on dozens and dozens of things, but I think we need to focus on a handful which are really essential. The accreditations of the community colleges, the question of the faculty control over curriculum and pedagogy, the maintenance of departments and department chairs, and I'm sure there are other related issues. Which is related to point 6 on the agenda, the same thing. Shall we come back to this at the next meeting of the FAC with a brief report?
I think so.
And there is some issue about whether the terminology which they use at the beginning here, where they say that they have accepted the, what did they say? and that their ruling is that the substantive change proposal be accepted and the system be advised to proceed with the plans to consolidate the 12 community colleges into Connecticut State Community College, CT State. The distinction there between accepting and final approval. I think that's another issue that we need to work on, a semantic question, but one of significance. Well,
Agreed.
so Kalina, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'll just give a very quick and brief report. Is it that time?
Yes.
Good, okay. So April 27th, there was a CCIC meeting, 24 degree programs, 16 certificates, and 166 courses were approved. And 2 sample crosswalks were shared. It's my impression that people have already seen these crosswalks. But if there's a need to review them, or if anyone wants to talk about them, happy to screen share and share them with you by email. And we can chat about them now. But let me just list some other things and we can come back to that. I want to draw everyone's attention to a letter from NECI that was not it was not available on the NECI timeline before, I think, last month. It's dated October 2021. And it concerns, it's fairly strongly worded about the need to engage with faculty and develop shared governance, but was not made publicly available. I believe it took a FOIA request on behalf of one of the unions to unearth it. So now it is on that timeline. Should you go back, the October 2021 letter is new material. I just realized that I also did not share NECI's response to our submission, and I will forward that to you. It is very brief, but it is a response, and that I received since our last meeting also. As far as the legislature, I'm not going to give the session just ended on Wednesday. It was long, and when it was exceptionally short, actually, but it felt exceptionally long. And being on the other side of the governor's position on almost everything in the system, it has made it extremely difficult and somewhat demoralizing. 2 things that have come out of it. This is not comprehensive, but I'll just mention a couple of things. 2 things that may have come out of the session are that there is now a requirement to clearly identify the central office finances in financial reporting so that they can sort of monitor how much of our block grants, which are actually given to the universities and to the colleges, how much of that ends up at the system office instead. And now we have 2 system offices. So how much of that is eaten up there and not actually making its way to the institutions to which it's actually allocated. And there's a change in the BOR's composition. There's a new, I assume, ex officio member who will be the workforce, the governor's workforce. I don't believe the title is commissioner. Like chief officer, I don't remember the exact, but the chief workforce person in the governor's office will be part of the board now. Another big thing that I'm sure we're all aware of is that our contracts made it through the House and Senate. So woohoo. That said, there continues to be a struggle. I don't know how many of you heard this, but regarding adjunct and I believe non-tenure track pay. There is quite a disagreement between the system and the union's perception of what happened and what they in fact negotiated. So you will hear some back and forth. It's there's a lot of conversation at the legislature about this because a complaint was filed. But it would be much faster if we could get some pressure to have and what I understand to be what we negotiated actually implemented. and I'll leave it at that. And if you want more specifics, I'll leave it. Happy to do it. But since I also function as political director for the union, I'm sometimes not quite sure how much to go into here or there, right? So just let me know if you want to know more. I don't want to say too much. And then another issue at the legislature, I know that you all know that for the how many years now, we've had this mergers and closures bill considered, raised by the higher ed committee, the committee has been extremely supportive. We also had a community college caucus in the legislature this semester that had, quite a number of signatures in support of this bill. In terms of sentiment, in terms of legislator, just sort of like support, personal support, we seem to have a lot. People are seeing how much chaos is going on here. Certainly, if our perception is that we're going to be peddling worthless degrees to a good portion of our public education, public higher ed institutions, right? That is something that people should care about at the legislature. But once again, it was not called. Again, we know that this consolidation has the full support of the governor, so that makes it quite difficult. So what did I want to say about that? Oh, I will say that anyone who read OFA, one of the chief obstacles to that being called was the fiscal note that was attached to pausing the consolidation. And I believe it was close to $11 million. It was claimed that it would cost if the consolidation were stopped today for the next fiscal year, right? So for fiscal year like 23, that's how much it would cost, $11 million over the course of that 1 year. Struck most of us as preposterous. I can share the link to the actual fiscal note with you for those of you who haven't yet seen it. And I want to also share an article from the Connecticut Mirror that Lois and Stephen Adair put together that really sort of explains why the fiscal analysis appears to be not just factually flawed, but logically flawed, which is, I mean, just really demoralizing when you consider that this is the way that these policies are. It's frustrating. Let me stop with the commentary, facts and facts. So in the chat right now, I put the link to the fiscal note first, and then the link to Lois and Stephen's article that really kind of explains why there are flaws in that fiscal note. All of that to say all of this is part of the reason that the legislative session was just not the friendliest to us. So yeah. This morning in the Academic and Student Affairs Committee meeting of the BOR, we had 40 degrees approved and various promotions and tenure at the universities, some research grants, and that's, the most notable. Some cool stuff going on at Capitol, going on at other colleges, but those are the sort of more system-wide issues. And then of note is that this month's Finance Committee meeting is canceled, just in case you were planning to attend that. I think those are most of the things. Yeah, that was pretty much everything that I wanted to mention in terms of a report. But I also want to make sure that I say this now, because I know we're trying to get through the rest of the agenda quickly. The FAC conference is on the agenda, but I just want to make a point of doing something that I promised Ken Klutnik I would do, which is to clarify what I said last time. So he had actually been kind enough to suggest that if we could get our stuff together fast enough this semester in the spring, the normal amount of funding for the FAC conference might be available to us, but it was so far through the spring, it would have been impossible to plan anything like that. So I know at the last meeting, I had proposed that it might make sense to ask whether that amount of funding could be used over the course of the entire calendar year rather than just the semester, so that perhaps we can do something in the fall. That is in fact not possible, and it's not even a decision that Ken can make right now, given that he will be moving from that position for a more permanent person to take it over relatively soon. And he wanted to make sure that that it was clarified that he didn't make promises that he couldn't keep, right? So I just want to make that clear that I was being really hopeful and saying that I was hoping to be able to ask whether that made sense. It turns out that it does not make sense, and that we would have to discuss that possibility with someone else if we wanted to do that, given the financial situation that we're in right now. Who knows? But just wanted to make sure that I cleared Ken's name on that one. So that's that. And that's all I have to say. I don't know if anyone wants to look at the crosswalks. I have heard some feedback on the crosswalks. The crosswalks, who knows this? I think Lois does. The crosswalks are intended to replace teach outs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is an odd way of going about things. And I'll have to admit, I missed this month's CCIC meeting miraculously. It was weird how I missed it. So I did miss the meeting. I missed the discussion. There might be more clarification. But I do know that there is a perception that these crosswalks do not sufficiently replace teach out. So I don't know if anyone wants to look at them, if you have them, or if anyone wants to discuss those, but I have them if you need them.
Besides the fact that they don't make any sense.
Does it make sense for me to screen share them? So just so we can.
Oh, sure.
Okay. David, do I have that ability? Oh, I do. Okay.
Yep.
Give me 1 second.
Oop. It was there and then it's gone. Kalina, are you still there?
I'm here. Sorry. Here you go. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll zoom. How's that?
Oh, very good.
Okay. And tell me when you want to scroll.
Can you zoom it a tiny bit more?
Sure. There we go. But there are a couple of pages. So I'm going to go down a bit. Programmatic. And that's the end. Okay.
Is there a significance to the difference between blue and green?
The green are Gen Ed and the blue are program courses.
Oh. The system office has done well.
All right. So,
So
I'm gonna
where
put in one-
CCS 101 is a new requirement,
Yep.
that is replacing elementary, no, it can't be. I'm not reading this right. It's not replacing elementary statistics with computer application.
Well, it's next to it, but
That doesn't make any sense.
it seems that it,
Oh yeah, it says new MIS students may have CCS 101 as it was added to the program for academic year 2021 to 2022.
That's the college success course, isn't it?
Yes.
yeah,
That's insane.
that fills
Well-
both CLIL and diversity.
So that's replacing Math 165?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Used to
crazy.
be scientific knowledge or reasoning or social behavioral science. To
And
admit, I
any
haven't looked
social
at-
or behavioral science is replacing economics?
Seems that way. I mean, so those choices, with the exception of CCS, which we know was required of all programs. I mean, these are adjustments that presumably a faculty group made. But they just it seems like a very different kind of degree. Let's look down here. Because these things are approved as a package with hundreds of other, or like dozens of others at the BOR, with the assumption that they already existed. In fact, it's with that notation. These already exist at the colleges. They're already approved. But I mean, we knew that there would be differences, but these are differences.
Really going to create a mess for the state universities when the students get there. A real mess.
Really hard to navigate.
Yeah, if Myrna were here, she might be able to talk about that. As it is,
Wait a minute,
she's
on the
retired.
left, isn't it supposed to, what's the left, the first?
That's the legacy.
Okay, but it's
And
got
aligned.
CCS 101 in there
Where?
at the bottom. bottom.
Oh,
Second to last.
they have it now?
I think they reversed it there. It should be a required GE
Ah.
course being replaced by CCS 101.
Or they just noted that it's
No,
already in the
they could.
data.
A lot of colleges have their own CS course, so maybe that's the CCS course for that college. Could be. Now, why they wouldn't have the CCS?
I
Or
think
to
Ron,
replace the
I think Manchester is the only one who has maybe adopted this course.
We have one of those. It's IDS, and it's a 1.5 credit. 1.5 credit we have.
Right, but they're specifically talking about this CCS 101.
Piloted.
Oh, that's true.
Okay. Well, thank goodness.
This is
We
total
have a lot of
nonsense.
advisors to
Yeah, this
navigate
doesn't make
all
any
of
sense.
this.
It's total nonsense.
So what it is in effect is a whole series of codified course substitutions.
Yeah.
It's hundreds of them, which make a mockery out of these
Right.
degrees.
And I apologize that I can't, speak better to it. I ended up missing the meeting. So
I
if there
don't
were
think
any
there is a way to
additional
speak better
discussion-
to it.
It is perplexing.
Mhm.
Okay, well,
It should be illegal. I mean, we've sold the students a product, and then we've taken that product and modified it after they've started their installment plan of purchasing it.
And even
And-
without the analogy, right? It was always my understanding that course catalog is your contract between student and its institution.
Right.
And that will describe the degree and the standards for the degree that you get. Like, I didn't know that this could be done.
We just need to get a lawyer to work with a student to file a lawsuit after this.
well, it is worth following up on this question. It's an interesting question here. I mean, they may claim that because they're transitioning from Norwalk Community College to CSCC, right, that there is no more catalog for Norwalk Community College, and this new, but on their view, substantially changed, which is not new, college. In that case, these courses will be the equivalents. So it's like they're transferring from one college to another.
So
But
the
David,
thing is,
Netche
we went
has
to a
this whole,
college that just
thing
closed.
about teach outs. They've got this whole documentation about teach out.
Uh-huh. Could you explain that a bit more?
And I don't have it in front of me, but they've got a documentation about when a college no longer exists for whatever reason, they contract with another college to teach out
I see.
teach out the programs for students who are already in them.
Okay. Well, look, I think this brings up an issue for us to come back and return to. So I don't think we can make any sense out of the documents that Kalina was kind enough to show us, but I think we can see the problem. And so we'll add that to the list of things when we come back next time to discuss NetShe and the whole CSCC issue. Okay, Kalina, do you have other matters that you want to bring up? All right, for funding for the
I'm
FAC
putting breaking news in the
conference, we just did that. And then there's COVID measures. Are there any pressing issues that we have with respect to that? I mean, basically classes are coming to an end. It is noteworthy that UConn went back to its masking mandate, whereas CSU did not. And I did write to all the people responsible, including folks at my own university, saying that, you know, shouldn't we be looking at this? And the answer that I got back was, you know, the system office had consulted some people, the responsible people at the universities and community colleges, whoever they may be. So that's the only issue that I had with respect to that. Anything else? Are there other issues, other business that we want to discuss?
Yeah, can I just ask Kalina, do you think that Ulster had checked on Allison Buckley's enrollment projections before they made her a finalist? Well, were they so impressed with her enrollment projections? They thought, oh, wow, we need her.
I think we've come to the end of the meeting. Lois, your cat has a special role at this point in the day.
He moves to adjourn. And supper.
Okay, and supper. That's fine because my horse, I can see him looking. I'll save the details about the horse till pat her afterwards. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Those opposed? We are adjourned. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment.